Yeah, so welcome everyone. So we finally do something that we wanted to do for a long time. Talk about HTML operators in cables and how they work and which are the most important ones and what you can do with it, and give like a overview of what is there and how we use them basically, and build some small examples. I don't know if we planned too much or not, but yeah, we'll just try to do this and see what comes out of it. So my name is Pandur, and this is Steam. We are the founders of Undev Studio, the company behind Cables, basically, and we're both developers and developing Cables GL, right?
Yeah, hi guys. As Tom just said, we've been waiting a long time to do this because it's just as audio and MIDI and stuff like that is another real big part of cables that you can do stuff with, and it's like a completely different world from the 3D stuff, but really goes well together with all the interactions and animations that we have. As you will see, and gives a really powerful tool to integrate cables into websites and then work with styles and all the stuff that you know from normal web front end development.
Yeah. So if there are any questions, please ask them. Just ask them. We please only ask questions about what's related to HTML and web stuff. We don't want to really to talk about WebGL or 3D or sound or anything. We just concentrate on the HTML stuff. So maybe it's a bit boring for many people, but this is really something that's really helpful if you develop client projects, for example, or you want to make a 2D user interface on top of your WebGL page or something like this. Okay, then I would just start, right? So let's start a new patch, and so the main operator that we will talk about today is basically the diff element operator. So I can create the operator diff element, and then you see up here it says hello diff. So this is our diff element. This is our HTML element basically. So so when I click the op, you see the options here. So you see I can just type in text in here, and it appears on top of my canvas. And this is very different from what we usually do in cables, because we don't have a main loop in this patch, which feels a bit weird in cables. So let me just create one. And then you see like it's getting black, and then it's over the main loop. So this is really the HTML stuff is really not connected to the WebGL stuff. It's just on top of it. It's on top of it. So you can also see, when you are familiar with the developer tools, you can use inspect, and then you can see the structure of your element. And there you see we have this diff element here, and somewhere else there's the canvas. But this is not important. Just wanted to show you, like, this goes into the DOM, and this is a real HTML element and nothing else. So let's have a look at the operator. So we already saw the text field here. We have an ID field. This is not so important right now. You can give the element an ID, which is like a unique identifier in the document. Then we have the class field. With this, we can attach CSS classes to the diff element, which we will see later. Then we have a style input port and a button, an editor button. So when I click this, it opens just a text editor, and I can edit CSS style in here. Yeah, so I can close this, and let's have a look what else we have. We have a toggle for interactivity, so we can click it basically, the div element. We have a toggle for visible, which can hide the div element and show it. And we have convert line breaks. That's not so important for us right now. So what I want to do first is I want to change the appearance of my div element here. So I open the style editor here, and I can do things like I can just do like every CSS parameter that's out there. This will be attached to the element. So I can say something like font size 20 pixels or 120 pixels, and I can just press Command S in here or press the save button, and then it will automatically update in the renderer like this. So you see directly what you're doing here, and please ignore those errors. We will fix them very soon. They are not they are just wrong, so ignore them. Yeah, so I can edit the styles, and you see the result right here directly. Yeah, so I can also say border and I don't know, make it a bit round and set the background color. And as you see, this is just the normal HTML, CSS stuff. So I can make like a nice button. So let's make it a bit smaller. So, and when you see this, like if you build this kind of stuff in WebGL, it's like it would be a lot of ops to do something like this. So HTML is really handy for this kind of stuff, for text rendering and for styling text, and yeah, CSS is a really handy tool to do something like this really quick without a lot of operators and stuff. So so it's really handy to do stuff like this. Also text rendering, it's always super crisp when you do it in HTML, because like the browsers, that's their thing to show text, and they are super optimized for this. So
we had this in the last release of Cables with the MSDF fonts to get like the crisp look of it. If you don't really need a 3D space with fonts, then sometimes it's better to do it in CSS, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say if you only have 2D text and 2D stuff that's not really connected to the world, I would do it this way. Also, you like maybe Google index your text in the search engine when you do it this way.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about that, but I think so. But yeah, and it's also like if someone uses a screen reader, for example, it's much better to do it this way, because people can use this, or they use a translating tool or whatever. Like it's just better to do it this way. If it's not like in your artistic way, if you want it like in 3D space or something, you can do it really with this. But other than that, you should use this, because it's just the standard technology on the web. Yeah, so we have this little button here, and we want to make this button clickable, basically. So we saw this little checkbox here, interactive. So when I enable this, first of all, nothing really changes, but in Cables we use the flow mode to debug stuff like this. So when I now click on the on my button, you see activity there in the flow mode. So when this is disabled, nothing happens. Then it's not interactive. And this is also handy in a lot of projects where you want to disable stuff like this. So for example, I can go and say I want to toggle something with this button. So I create toggle bool, and down here you see the result. And when I click it, you see it changes from true to false. And I can now use this value in my WebGL rendering path, basically. So maybe I want to switch between two colors. So I create an if true then statement here, and then when I click now, you see I can switch between those two background colors. And this does not feel like a button because I have this text cursor here. So I just want to fix this and say cursor pointer. And now you see when I hover, I have this this usual clickable cursor icon you know from your browser. Yeah, so this way I can control a value and use this value in my WebGL path and make a decision with this. I can also, for example, link to another website with this. So we don't really have a link element or an anchor element. We currently only have the div element, but I can connect this to an op which is called hyperlink. And so this op can open a window to another website. So I can say open CablesGL in a new blank tab. So when I click this now, you see it opens a new tab here on CablesGL. So this is super handy if you want to link to another website or something like this.
There's another part on the div element that says hover. Can you show what that does?
Oh, right. Totally forgot about that. Yeah, so we have another output which means says hover. And this becomes true when the mouse is over the element. So when I would connect this to it, and now I hover, then you see when I'm hovering, the background is differently because this value here becomes true when I'm hovering. Which is also super handy because often you want to highlight something when you hover a div element or a text or a button or something. And then you can use it like this. Yeah, and this is also turned off when you turn off interactive. Then this is also not active anymore. Yeah, thanks, Stefan. Anything else I forgot already?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions, just let us know in the chat, and then we will answer them. Otherwise, we will just go through all the operators and yeah. Okay. So another thing that we want to show is another HTML element. And by the way, as you can see here, hopefully all the HTML stuff is in the namespace ops.html. So you can just enter HTML basically in the search field, and then you see all the operators that are helpful with HTML stuff.
There's a question on the chat. Mario Epsili asks whether or not you can have two different stylings in one div element.
Two fonts, yeah. Not really. You have to build a hierarchy of div elements. Like you have to use multiple div elements, and then they can have multiple fonts. We will show later how you build like a parent and a child relationship with div elements, where you put multiple div elements in a big one, and there you could use multiple stylings.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But the question about fonts is
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. That's our next thing. Like we want to change the font in here. So how do we do that? We go into the styling again, into the style sheet again, and we say font family, I don't know, monospace. And then you see the font changes to a monospaced font, which is like a programmer font, basically. I can change it to Arial or Times New Roman, and you see it's directly changing. So those font families, they are the default font families that come with your browser. So on every operating system, those three fonts at least look mostly the same. But you can also upload your own fonts. Let me see. So for this, I can, yeah, I totally did not prepare this, but we already have some fonts there. So I can go, I'm on my hard drive right now, and I can just take a file, a TTF file, for example, and upload it here. And then it should appear in this list. Did I do it wrong? Mm-hmm.
Did you maybe upload the same file again?
This could be, probably. I would just delete this. This was from our testing session. So I take the TTF file and upload it here. Yeah, you're right. So, and then we uploaded a new font file. So, I think we can even, no. Okay. So we uploaded this to Cables, and now we can create an operator called font file, which loads a font. So I can now select a file, like the new file we uploaded. And this font is called book in this case. So you can set the font family here. So you can type anything you want, but it should somehow be related to that font. So I give it the family book, and now I can go here, and then I can here use that font family again. So, and then you see it's a totally different font, which we defined by loading this font file here. So you can throw any web font at Cables, and you can use them with this font file op.
Which font formats are supported? Can we do web fonts and TTF and OTF? And
Yeah, WOFF or
yeah.
WOFF files or whatever you
WOFF.
say, TTF, and yeah, it's a bit depends on your browser that you want to support. So I think WOFF files are the safest, actually. So I would stick to them. I want to upload another font. Wait, yeah. So now I uploaded the Bodoni font here. So I can create another font file, and you can create you can load as many fonts as you like, and give it the family name Bodoni. And that didn't work.
Wir machen Bund is asking how to make sure the font file is loaded in time. It sometimes doesn't work, it says.
Yeah, this is one reason why we implemented the MSDF stuff, because you actually can't know when the font is loaded, because HTML is super asynchronous about this, and there is some newer API where you can ask, is the font loaded, but there is no real way to be able to know the font is loaded. So we use this here, but I think it's not. This is not compatible with all the browsers right now. I guess like Safari doesn't support it. I'm not sure right now. Yeah. I think those are the same fonts, just with different names. Can this be?
What?
Yeah, I'm still debugging my font problem. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Maybe the file is funny somehow.
It,
Yeah.
Sometimes yeah, is it?
I don't know.
Sometimes I had it that I had to put the font family name in quotes for some reason.
Yeah, but it worked with the other one, right? Okay, I'm not sure. So let's try another font. Let's try this Helvetica. Oh yeah, this works directly.
That works.
Okay. Yeah, I
This
think
also
you
works.
you need this if you have spaces, but yeah, I'm also not sure. It's
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so somehow the font file was wrong, I guess. So now I can switch between those two loaded fonts. Nice. Okay. Let's just give it the right name. Okay. Yeah. Okay. If there are no further questions, then you will continue, Stefan, right?
Yeah, right. Let's see how this works.
So should I create a new patch for you?
No, I'll
Okay.
work with this.
Okay.
So wait a second.
Yeah, so we are trying this for the first time. So Stefan is also controlling my PC now over another program to remote control my PC. And our tests were really successful with this. Let's see how this works.
The scrolling is not working. Like I'm scrolling up and down and not in and out. But this works. Okay, great. So what Pandur said before is we have the ability to give these div elements an ID and a class. Maybe if you come from a web development background, do some front end development, you know these already. These are pretty convenient to group different styles. So say we have not only this div element, but we have another one. Oh, great, this also doesn't work.
What?
Control C doesn't work. So we have another div element, and that's now up there, right? But we want this to look the same as this one, basically. So then we would have the possibility to just go there and copy everything out of that. But what we usually do in CSS is work with classes. So we give the two divs that we have, or all the divs that we want to look the same, a class, and then group together the CSS in that way. For this, we have the CSS op that basically gives you a text editor that you then can paste your CSS in. I'm now copying all of this from here. I'm actually stealing all of this.
Should I?
Yes, pretty please.
Okay.
And then copy it over to the CSS. Why doesn't this work? For security reasons or what? I don't know. Okay, so now we have this,
Yeah,
and
probably because this is a Mac and you have Linux. You need maybe
Maybe I
use
try
the Windows
out.
key.
Yeah, try to. Wait a second.
What is
Yes,
when you
that
press
was.
Windows A? Okay, no idea.
Okay, let's do this that way. So this now removes all the styles from the element that we had before, and this is not valid CSS at this point because we need to group this to an element, and then we have to give this element a class name. In CSS, we usually write something like this. So we have a button, and this one then would put everything that we had before in this group of a button. And then now to save this and go back, and if I now give this div element the class button, then it should like it did before, absolutely does. And now I can give my new div element also a class of button, and then it would look exactly the same. Now here we already see the problem with maybe having like grouped styling, like styling classes and buttons, because some of the stuff, maybe positioning, might be individual things that um, we have to work on individual elements. So most of the stuff here in here, oh, sorry, most of the stuff in here um, should be okay for all of the buttons. The positioning should be okay. Fonts should be okay. Background color is all fine. But these two now are overlaid, and we want to position them individually, maybe below each other or next to each other. We'll see. For this, we can either, as we saw before, like edit this text right here, the CSS, or we use an op that we can then control maybe from the outside, which we call CSS property. We add this, and we will see this later, and we didn't have this before. This div element outputs the DOM element on this port, and this CSS property, and we'll see this later, also with building hierarchies of div elements and user documents, say, you work with this structure all the time. So we put this div element into this CSS property, and then we have the possibility to style individual CSS properties. Basically the same that we do right here in the text editor. So this would be position absolute. We go in here and place this. Since we are positioned absolute, we can give this top, and then we can give this a value of 100, and this has 100 pixels. So we now positioned this element individually with all the same styles, still buttons, still, this doesn't have the interactivity because I didn't copy it, but we can also, yeah, let's keep it this way. So we still have the functionality, we have the shared styles, and these elements, the styles of the elements are a lot cleaner actually this way. And with using the CSS property, we have the nice possibility that we get the value of the property, which is a number, as an output, as an input up. So just for really simple stuff, we can do can get a number up out here. Enter doesn't work either on that one, right? And then somehow we get this later. Control this. This also doesn't work. It's really
Should
nice.
I do? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Maybe
fine. We
connect a
can.
sign anim or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that will work. Really now? Okay, I cannot believe we
Okay.
will work with this now. So as we saw, we have like two, well, basically three different possibilities to put style to. Thank you. To put style on an element, we now worked with the global CSS in classes by giving classes to our elements. We can do the individual styling of the element in in the editor on the element itself. And now we have the CSS property, which gives us the nice ability of what Pandur just did, controlling the value of the property from the outside world. Say we put an animation on top of it. To further go from there, we can work with these classes, right? So these classes can be, you can have multiple classes, but we can also give more
You can
state.
have multiple classes. Oh, yeah.
You can,
Yeah.
you absolutely can have multiple classes, right? But we can also then work with states. So if we, for example, go here and say in CSS, we would say something like button active, and that then has a border of 2 pixel solid red. So this in CSS syntax means any element that has the class of button and has the class of active. So none of our elements does have this right now, but we have an op that we will use now that will basically give us
Maybe first show it directly.
yeah, sure. So if we now give this div element the class active, then we will have the red border around this. And if it doesn't have the class active, it doesn't have the red border. To basically have some control over which classes these have, we created the toggle class op. I just search for it and can add it. And this also, as we saw before, gets an HTML element, and then it gets a Boolean. So if I want, I can put this element in here. And as we know, this is interactive. We still have this, right? And now I can put the hover element, for example, onto the toggle class. And that would then, right. The toggle class also needs the class name, obviously. So we're toggling the active class. And then right now it really should give us a red border when hovering over it and no red border when not hovering. And what actually happens right here is, I hope this is visible here. Oh no, it's not. What actually happens is, additionally to this button class, this will also get an active class right now. So we have a lot of state possibilities here, and with the class and the CSS op, we can do lots of stuff. For example, removing rounded borders, like doing a slight displacement of the button so that it looks as if it would be pushed in or something like this. And yeah, right. That is that. Any questions on that? Tom, you got any questions? Apart from the mess that I made.
Um, um, so the text in the CSS op, right?
This one?
Yeah. So
And then the,
this is like a CSS file, right?
yeah, absolutely. We're doing normal CSS here, so you can use whatever CSS your browser supports. We're not doing, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's right that we're not doing any SCSS or SAS compiling. If anything, any one of you guys knows of this, so use like normal proper CSS.
Yeah.
This would be nested stuff in SCSS basically. But yeah, that's a normal CSS file. So you could even copy and paste stuff from wherever you develop your front end, for
Okay.
example. If you
And then we can also, like, maybe we do like a hover state in CSS directly just to show it that this is possible.
right.
So maybe opacity or something, I don't know.
Sure. We can do something like, so CSS also has this states, like we toggle the activity and we put it on the hover. And since the CSS people said, okay, this happens really often, all the elements have like, what's it called? I think it's called pseudo states pseudo states that basically are addressed like this. And also maybe interesting, but maybe also known, all the CSS stuff adds up, right? So if they don't interfere with each other, then it gets all the styles that it gets from all the information it has. So by doing this, we say, okay, in using CSS, if you hover over this button, then we can say set the opacity of the whole thing to 0.6 maybe. And then that would give every button the opacity, and also this one where yeah, every button that is being hovered over now gets an opacity of 0.6. There's a lot of more of these pseudo states like visited and active and inactive and stuff like that. But I guess hover is the most common one that is being used. Wirmanbund said, just what I need. I wasn't aware that you can do all of this from within cables. Mega. Yes.
Moin Mate. Yeah, maybe we can. Yeah, okay.
There's like one last thing that goes a bit deeper into CSS, and it's also a bit new in the CSS standard, is CSS variables that can be used. So for example, you can do set CSS variable. And for now, we just use a string. And now we just in CSS assign to a var name that is called my var a value of 0.6, right? And then we can go into the CSS and replace this opacity, and that works in any CSS in cables. We can do this. I hope it's correct. Yeah, and now we have the same effect, but also the same thing. Since we're setting a string here, we can now then again control it from the outside, and that with the 0.6 works. Yeah, with a number to string, but I can now put this on 0.2 and have this like really lots of opacity going on there.
Yeah, we don't have a set CSS variable number, right? I think because most of the time you have to append like pixel or percent or em to the end, so this
Yeah,
is why we have strings only. Yeah,
well, I mean, you can work around with like
yeah,
number to string, obviously, and then go from there, and then do whatever. So that sign element should be in a proper range. It goes from, oh no, it goes to 200. Yeah, right, whatever. You can do a number to string and then basically tweak this number on 0.21. And then go from there, and then you have control over this number and put it on whatever you want.
yeah.
And Pandur explicitly asked me to show the documentation, the example of this one, because it also shows a thing that I actually, no, that's not the one.
It's the color one,
Yeah,
CSS
right.
variable color.
There's a nice set CSS variable color one that basically takes all the work of doing colors in CSS, be it hex or RGB values. Always the syntax is a bit weird, but we're also only looking at the example, and this also shows a nice thing about cables. Well, the editor, as you see, since we're working in HTML space and CSS and diffs and everything, we now have the ability to style basically all of cables, right?
Yeah,
Because yeah,
yeah. So this is like a bit goofy, and it doesn't seem like a good thing to do, but imagine when you work with a developer outside of Cables and they say like, or they give you like a variable name and they say, okay, you can control the opacity of the menu from your WebGL part. And then you don't need a JavaScript API or something. You just work with the CSS variable to show, like, make stuff visible from their HTML that they do, and you only do the 3D part. You just want to control those values. And yeah, then it's super handy to be able to do this kind of stuff. Yeah, so
This is also maybe a topic because Wir machen bunt asked, well, basically said just what I need. I wasn't aware that you can do all of this from within Cables. Yes, you can do this. And you can also, maybe that's a topic for another talk, do it like the other way around, like basically get stuff out of Cables into the outside world and then work from there. So sometimes it really depends on your project and your use case, which of these approaches makes more sense, or doing it in Cables, doing it outside of Cables, and controlling it from inside of Cables. It really depends.
yeah, I wouldn't do like really complex stuff in here, but for a little navigation or for some buttons or something like this, it's totally fine.
So
Yeah.
any other questions? Seems quiet. Then I hand back to you, Tom, right?
Okay. Yeah, so I will make a new patch, and maybe we should publish this, clean this up, and then publish it after the talk. I will create a new one, and I just want to. You saw the toggle class and the property ops, and I want to show some more really handy helper ops for HTML stuff. So let me just make it visible a bit more. I cannot type. Okay. So one op is really handy. We wrote it because we use it a lot, and it's called background image. Loads a background image and use CSS styling. So with this we can use graphics, image files in our HTML elements. So usually we do this with textures, but you can also say this div element has a background image, for example. I quickly need to find the file I want to show you.
Are we not using the beach?
We could use the beach. Actually, no. I want to show a SVG because it's just such a good use case for this. And I am lost. Okay, let's use the beach. So when I click background image, you see you can select an image file. So I can click our beach image, but I didn't connect them, so sorry about that. So I connect this, and then you see the div element gets the beach as a background image. And this is a really tricky one always in HTML, make an image fit to a div element. So the div element has a totally different aspect ratio than our image. So usually in Cables it would be stretched, But in this case, we just see like a portion from the image. And we have a few options here uh, where we can say, so this is, in the end, this is just a CSS setting, but we made this up to make it easier and make it quicker. And also it's much easier to just try out some values from a drop-down than to remember all those things, because I don't remember what the difference between cover and contain is, and I also don't want to remember this all the time because I don't use it so often. But yeah, it's just handy. You can control this with the drop-downs, and yeah, you can say if the image should repeat. Let me make the font a different color so it's more visible. And yeah, you can set it to different values. You can also position this so the image starts there, not in the center. And yeah, with this you can create like a website hero with a background image or something like this, or like a photo gallery. Basically, you could do this without any WebGL. You can do it with only CSS stuff. But actually, what we do most of the time is we load SVG icons there as little buttons, and I want to show this. So now I remember. So we have, okay, so I found it. So now I found my file cables SVG file, so I can just upload this like a normal file, and you see it's appearing here and already previewing. So I can select this file as a background, and so imagine we want a button with this icon on the left side. So we can just do this with those two ops and just change the styling. So the background image should not repeat. So now you see it's only once there. And when we select auto or contain, in this case, it will always be the full height of our HTML element. We can also say, no. Okay, let's use contain, and we can now say padding to the left is 40 pixel, or let's say 150 pixel, and then we basically created a button which has the image on the left. So I can make this a bit nicer. And this way we load buttons into cables like that are SVG, and this is also super handy because if you resize your browser like this, then you see it's still full resolution. So this is just rendering normally in the best resolution there is, and this is super handy when you have like high resolution displays like mobile phones and stuff. And this will always be crisp. So maybe your WebGL rendering is a bit slow and you have some performance issues. You can render the WebGL stuff in a different resolution than those HTML things. They will always be crisp, and this is what you want. Like the text should always be crisp and not downsized. If you have like a blurred image or something, this can be, the resolution can be much lower. But this stuff you always want to have crisp. So we use this a lot for buttons, basically.
And then you could still add all the interactivity that we had in the patch before, like attach a hyperlink to that div element, for example.
Yeah, totally. There's no, this doesn't interfere with the interactivity or anything. Yeah,
it's also possible to, like we did before. Did we do this? Like you can pull multiple stuff to different, like you could put CSS property on there. That would also not
this works a bit different than the normal data flow in cables, because this is basically object oriented. So this operator is modifying this element that comes out from here. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a different workflow, but this is really the easiest way to that we could build to use in cables, basically.
Yeah,
And
it will become a lot clearer, I think, once we do more div elements that are maybe next to each other or something like this. So if you have a hierarchy, then it actually looks like the document.
Yeah. Yeah, so this background image also has an active button, so you can enable or disable it. We also had projects where we just changed the file name of this icon to another one while at runtime, which is also quite helpful. Hey, country boy. Okay, so this is this helper. So I want to show another one which we basically use like in every project, really. So let me do a new patch. This is just confusing. So yeah, so what we saw before, we changed the opacity. Stefan changed the opacity, and so you could use a bool anim to fade in and out stuff, but we do this so often, we build an extra helper class for HTML elements that can fade in and out the elements. So we already have this visible checkbox to make stuff visible or invisible, but we also have this element fade in out operator. So in this one has a checkbox, and you can click it and then it fades in and out, and you can give it a duration. So it's really fast now, and you can give it an opacity. Okay. Let's ignore this for now. So, and the cool thing about this is this actually internally uses CSS animation, so it's not updating the DOM all the time or something. It's really using CSS animations, which is like they are basically the fastest way to fade in and out HTML elements, because the browsers are really used that this is animated. So to fade in and out stuff, you should always use this thing. Yeah, and it's super handy. And if you want to hide or show something in HTML or on a website, you basically never want this to be gone directly. You most of the time you just want to fade it in and out. I know wir machen bunt would ask this question.
Yeah,
And sadly
does
no.
div element work with arrays? Feed an array of strings and create a list of div tags which can control independently.
Yeah, sadly right now this is not possible. But so there's a point on our list which is which internally creates instances of ops, and but yeah, we are not there yet. But this is on our list. But for small navigations with like, I don't know, 3 to 10 elements, it's okay to patch it by hand. But yeah, we also want to create div elements with arrays, but currently that's not possible.
But then let's do a small navigation, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let me check my notes here. Yeah. So when we talk about multiple elements, basically we want to create a hierarchy, like where's like this one container element So let's think about, we want to create a navigation. Basically, let's say like on cables.gl, we have those points, those navigation points next to each other. Let's ignore this menu that's popping up, but let's just think about those navigation points up here. So we want to create something like this with our div elements. So let's make this a bit more visible. So let's say this is a navigation item from our menu, right? So what Stefan showed us is the property op. Or let's say we can position this by just entering a CSS position like left 50 pixels. So now I can just position those elements, but you never know like how wide, how is the width of this element, and then you would have to calculate to put them next to each other, which is really not the CSS way. So in CSS you would create one container and then you would put the other div elements in this container, and then they would be automatically next to each other. Is this understandable, Steam?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so
positioning is it's also always a weird thing in CSS with like absolute positioning, relative positioning,
yeah,
and stuff like that. But yeah.
yeah. So we don't want to position every div element individually. We just want that they float together and they just stick together, basically. But maybe the whole container thing we want to set the position. So, okay, let's try this. So we call this element, this is our container. So the red border is our container element, and we want to put other div elements into this element.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an op that's called element childs, set childs of an HTML element. So this looks like our sequence or something, but this is not an execution order. This is the parent input port, and those are child input ports, as you can see here.
But they are in order, right?
They are in order, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So so I will, this way I define like this is our parent element. This is like our higher level element that contains all the childs. So when I create another div element and connect it as a child, then you see something is happening there. So this is a bit strange because our default style says position absolute, which you don't want in this case. As I said, you don't want to position the div element absolutely. You just want to put them in there. So I will just delete this position absolute thing.
Just to make it clear, like position absolute basically in this case means in reference to the window.
Yeah, position absolute means, yeah, in reference, like you can just say a pixel coordinate and then the div element will move there.
Yeah.
I will also show this later because now we can actually position the parent element, and all the child elements are going with it. So now I want to add multiple div elements in this container element. So I will just copy paste them. Let's just stick to 3. And you see the red box is growing, it's expanding because this is like default behavior in HTML, like the outer element is growing. So actually, let's use the inspector and see what we are doing here. So I don't know if this is readable at all, but I will just show it really quickly. So when you hover elements here, you see which one you are hovering there. So this one is our big container element, and we see there are 1, 2, 3 little div elements in there, and those are our 3 navigation items, I would call them. So they are in this one. If I close this, they are all gone because they are in this element.
Yeah, it's a container, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
just as the name said.
I like the word container for this because yeah. So we already gave this the class container. Now let's do this in a proper way. I will remove this and make a CSS op again and edit CSS code for our container.
A short question.
Yeah.
So if I export my patch, would it then be possible to use external CSS on my website to style these elements? Are they
Yeah,
exposed?
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter where the CSS comes from because they are just normal HTML elements.
Yeah.
So, and now I want to style my navigation items. So actually, let's call this navigation. That makes more sense to me. Or let's call it nav. Like this. And those 3, we give the class nav item. So nothing changed because we don't have a class in here yet. So nav1. So now I will create this nav item CSS class. And let's say they also get a border, just so we see what we are doing. Let's make this border blue. Nice coder colors here. Padding. So now we have those 3 elements in there. So if you have a vertical navigation, this is already quite usable, right? So I could also let me make it a bit nicer. We do something like a nice background color. I hope this is even visible on the stream, but nobody is complaining, so make it a bit bigger. Oops. And now I want some spacing in there, so I can use the margin CSS property to make a little space out of them. And so I want that it really feels like a navigation, so let's give it a little hover state. So I use this pseudo element nav item hover and say background color is something like this. So now when I hover, you see already feels like a navigation. Let's give it a nice cursor. Yeah, so I want this not to be vertical, I want this to be horizontal, so they should be next to each other. So the reason why they are below each other is because the div elements are by default block elements, and I really don't want to go into detail what's the difference between a block element and an inline element, but this is actually the easiest way to switch. Yeah, how do you say this? Like the floating behavior of HTML elements. So I say display inline. Yeah, great. Okay, I forgot something. Do you have any idea, Stefan?
No, looks okay, doesn't it?
Okay, maybe we just do it this way. Yeah, okay.
Wir machen Bund is asking, would this work as well? Media only screen and Max with, well, basically he's asking whether or not media queries work in this editor.
Yeah, totally. Just imagine this is just like your normal CSS file that you load from a file. There, everything works in there, all the media queries and stuff. So what he's asking is, usually you create websites, and websites can be opened on like a mobile phone or also on a really widescreen display. So nowadays you want to build responsive websites, right? That react to the device you're watching it. Like maybe you want to hide different elements, and you want to show like the image should be bigger, or like 2 columns on the desktop. So you can use those CSS rules in Cables too. It's a bit confusing because they work only on the whole document and not on this element. So in theory, this would be phone resolution, but you would still see the desktop resolution. So you go, basically you open this page here, and then you can try out how does it look on a phone or something. Or you go here and scan this on your phone, and then you can try it out on your phone. But yeah, there are some hacks to simulate it, but you really have to test this on the device itself. Yeah.
Can you try the display inline again? I really want to see what.
No, I don't want this.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not working. I have no idea.
Okay.
But yeah, float left is also fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we have 3 navigation elements.
So undefined country boy is asking, is there a way to generate HTML ops from a simple HTML file, or is that too unpredictable? Do you mean like something of a templating engine, or some import that then generates the div elements? I don't quite understand, but both of which don't currently work in Cables.
Yeah, you could just put HTML in here, right? So you can write this, for example. You can create HTML as a string and then use it there. So if you don't see, like, the later part is now bold, so you can even create new div elements in here. So you can load a file with HTML and then put it, like, use it as a string.
That will work. That will work really well for, I don't know, textual overlays or stuff like that. But then you basically lose all the control over the div elements and whatever.
Yeah, usually we don't do this. Like, usually we have like a few div elements that we fill with text. Yeah, or we use for different stuff. So okay, so what I want to show is, like, we now have this nice navigation bar. So, and we have all of this in the container, and this is not only visually handy, but you can also say, okay, the container I want on the bottom. So I just say bottom 0, so it will be positioned on the bottom of your window or of the canvas in Cables. So you can also say right 0, and then it goes to the right, and right bottom 0, then it goes down there. So this is super handy because, yeah, we can just move the whole group and not each item individually. And as you already saw, but probably is like, you can just enter text here and it just grows in size because that's just normal HTML behavior, basically. I don't even know yeah, so this is another thing, but I will not go into detail, but you could set like a maximum size for those elements and all this kind of stuff, and control like the breaking of the text in there. Yeah, so we have this this navigation here, so let's do something with it. So maybe we want to control something in WebGL with our navigation bar. So maybe we want to, let's just build something easy here. We want to show like a different like a different mesh when you hover over those ops. So that totally didn't work. So I have to make them interactive. So now I can change the shape by just hovering. And let's create a triangle. So now I can switch between those shapes basically by hovering. We can also make this change by clicking, but this is just faster for now.
Yeah, this way you have like a really powerful tool to give the user like the user of your patch some presets or whatever to choose from.
What do you mean?
Yeah, just as you did with the sphere and the cube, now basically the user of your patch has the ability to, well, basically
Yeah.
select their animation. What we often do with the sidebar, but a bit more in style of the whole thing.
Yeah. 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 And so another way would be we can create a div element that let me make it visible again. A div element that shows a lot of text. So we have this awesome op lorem ipsum, and this shows a lot of text, as you see. Okay, maybe let's not put so much text in it. Maybe there's just content number 1. And we have this fade in, element fade in out. And so maybe we do, when we click the first element, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but yeah, let's try. So we create a toggle bool. No, we make a set number on trigger. I think this is too complicated actually.
What do you want to?
Yeah, I basically
goal?
want to switch between multiple ops. Maybe we just say we only have like 2 navigation elements, and we have a toggle bool. Oh no, we trigger boolean. So now when we click this, this div element is showing up, and when I click this, it's fading out, right? So when I now create another one, so this is second content div. So I just want to see the opposite. So I use the not operator to invert this selection basically and set this to visible. So now when I click this, then you see this is a nice crossfade. Let me make it slower. Now you see it's just fading between both div elements, which is a nice way. And you can just create, you can basically just create content elements and switch out the content in there and fade them in a smooth way. And yeah, you can build your little content management system in Cables basically.
Yeah.
It's totally the best way to do this. No, but for like little content stuff, this is it's really quite handy. And actually, I just want to show what I wanted to show before with the lorem ipsum. So this looks quite horrible, but we can say we want this only this size and then overflow auto. And now it gives us a scroll bar, and we can scroll the text. So you could make a little information section on your website, and you can make it scrollable, and you have like a little content element in there.
And also, this is then text, right? We were coming from screen readers, but also, you can mark it, and copy paste it.
Yeah, you can mark it and everything. You can also, by the way, we also have an iframe element. Totally forgot about that. So I can create an element which contains another website, basically, which is also quite handy. Yeah. That's our little navigation.
Looks great.
Okay, let me check my notes.
We were talking about more helpers, basically. We also were talking about before on overlays and stuff like that. We have this modal helper. Do you want to show this quickly?
Yeah.
That would go fine with one of these clicks on nav elements, I guess.
Yeah. Where's this in my notes? But yeah. Yeah. So let's add the third one again, and so I mean this is handy, but maybe you just don't want, like, it's just annoying to have this over the WebGL background. So in many cases we have modal dialog. So what's a modal dialog? So for example, this is a modal dialog, right? This op select, just you can only do the op select right now. Everything in the background is grayed out, and when I click in the background, I go back. I just close my modal dialog. We use this all the time in Cables, basically. So for example,
there's like an often used pattern on websites to basically grab the attention of the user and block everything out.
Yeah, it's just a normal UI pattern. Like this is also a modal dialog, basically. So you use it, like website uses all the time. So we can build this with a div element that has opacity, and then we put another div element on top and all this stuff. But so we use this a lot. So we created an operator for this already because we use this. We have this so often.
It's not that old, is it?
Yeah, no, but I wanted to write it for a long time, so I think we will use it a lot. So we have modal overlay. So, and this works like this. So I will create a new new div element with a lot of text, and I will just put this in our modal overlay op. So with this modal overlay, I can say show and close, and this will gray out the screen, the background, and it also shows a little close icon, and it also has this functionality show and close here. So I want to style this so it looks a bit better. Um, I would just do this quick and dirty, whatever. So so now we have this modal overlay which we can open, and now we can connect this to our third div element and say we connect this to show. So when I click this, this dialog basically opens, and you see this is grayed out. So when I click anywhere, it will just close this. So this is super handy for like little about texts or something like this. But you could also put in like complex HTML in here that you scroll, so you can put a whole website in here. But you should do that, but you could. Yeah. And you already have this little close button, and you can close it. Yeah, this is also a super handy
Yeah, absolutely.
operator to do this kind of about text or something. Also, we just recently used this for yeah. Here's another example with two buttons where you open a text and you can scroll it, and here you can open a YouTube player,
Here,
which is another HTML operator where you can directly embed a YouTube video in your page. And when I click this, it automatically stops the YouTube video, which is also quite handy. Because often, like, you maybe you have this fancy WebGL thing going, but the client just wants to show the video of their shoe or something on YouTube or something, and then you can use this and overlay this over your WebGL background, basically. Yeah. Exactly. Any questions? What's there? Andrew is going by. Andrew. Yeah, usually you see Andrew here on Tuesday, but we thought we would show our faces too. Yeah, so
now all the time we've been talking about like 2D space and HTML and stuff like that, and now we're controlling cubes and spheres that we show. Is it anyhow possible to combine these somehow?
yeah, a little bit, at least. So I mean, they exist in different worlds, right? So, but in the end, we have a 2D screen where our 3D stuff is showing, so we can basically use the 2D coordinates of 3D stuff and show HTML elements on this. So let's do this. So we'll just first create a little WebGL example, a cube, and give it a material, and give it camera, and give it a brighter color. So I can now rotate this cube. So HTML elements that we saw are always in 2D space. So or what we often do is like we have like a 3D model, and then you want to see more information about like a specific part of your 3D model. Say you have, I don't know, like a shoe, and you click on the sole or on the, I don't know, the front or something, and then there's like a little button that you can click and you see more information about it, which is easy in 2D, but in 3D it's not that easy. But we have like a little helper operator for this. So let me create like a little, we call this hotspots from now on. So like a little hotspot HTML, which is like just a round button, basically. So there we go. So we have a white HTML element. Let's give this a lower opacity so we can look through this. and I want like a little let's do it like this. Okay, let's ignore that it's not round. You can find out how to do this later. So we have this little question mark. Let's call it circle. And we want to attach this to the cube actually. So
can you do the rotation with the orbit controls right
yeah.
now, so we see that it actually doesn't rotate?
Yeah, it doesn't follow the cube.
Yeah.
And we have an operator which connects like both worlds. That's called transform element. And this one is connected to our main loop as we are used to by the normal WebGL operators. But this also takes an element as an input. So we can connect this diff element to the transform element basically. And now this is actually in 3D space, but it's actually at 0, 0. So it's always connected to the center of the cube, as you see when I pan around. So I actually want this to attach this to a corner of the cube. So I know the cube is 1 unit width, height, and length. So I will just translate this to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and now you see it's attached to this edge there. I can center this when I click those, then it's exactly centered to this edge.
Yeah, you still see that it's in 2D as the item itself is, really rotating, right?
Yeah, the icon is not rotating, it's always facing to the camera.
Yeah, sure.
Like billboarding. And you also see like it's not hidden, like it's always visible, it's not overlapped by the cube or something. Yeah, but this is quite helpful, and we can now also make this interactive and show some information about this special side of the cube, this corner of the cube, and we can create overlays or like the modal thing and show more information about this edge, this specific edge. Yeah, so let me just do another one. So now I transform it to this edge. So you can imagine like showing like a complicated 3D model, like a car or something, and you click on the tires or on the or you hover this and then it shows you like it gets transparent or something like this. It's a cool way to modify your 3D object or show information about it. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, we can create a toggle bool again that would hide all of them with another button or with another menu. So we can switch around this and make like use our navigation menu to show or hide those hotspots of the 3D model. Yeah, any questions about this?
Not as far as I can see. Would it be possible to hide these, the things that are behind the cube?
Um, yeah, probably, but I don't have an easy solution right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are ways, but yeah, I don't know right now.
Because none of these does have a Z position, right?
I mean, the easiest way would be we calculate the absolute position with the rotation in there, and if this is like smaller than zero, basically, or when it's far away, then we fade it out or something like
Yeah.
this.
Okay. Hmm.
Um, yeah, actually, no. Yeah, you could you could do it in some way, but yeah, it's always tricky. You could also, like, if you don't have orbit controls, like the easiest solution would be you just have a transform, and then you see like if this is if the rotation is like this, then you want to hide this. Yeah, there's a lot of tricks or a lot of ways to do this actually. Or maybe you want to test if the object is even drawn on the screen and then decide if it's shown or not.
Hmm.
But yeah.
And these again go both directions, right? So now we kind of use the cube to position the 2D elements, but we can also again use the hover and the click to maybe control the cube, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
if I hover over element, the cube gets bigger or whatever.
Yeah, good one. Um, so let's create a scale and a bool anim.
So wir machen bunt just asked, very handy. Did this exist when you visited Kiel?
Yeah.
Yeah, we visited Kiel in February, I think. That existed back then, yeah.
Yeah, we showed it, but I think you were late that day. Um, so what did I do? Ah, yeah. Yeah, that's not a good idea. So I need to make this interactive and not linear. So now when I hover this, then the cube grows.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's a bit problematic because like this, it just loses the focus because
Hmm.
it just goes out of. Yeah, you can follow it, like you can make a little game. Yeah, and this way you can control parameters of the cube basically, or we just do this, like let it grow when you hover this. Pew.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, so another thing, like we have this really cool op that is called transform element 3D, CSS 3D, um, which does that using the CSS 3D technology to rotate the div element even.
Hmm.
So it's also not overlapping, but it has the same rotation as the elements in your scene. But this is really experimental technology, so it doesn't really work well on Firefox. It's not really battle tested, but it's just it's really interesting, and we're really proud of this op.
I mean, it's cool. It's like a super easy way to do like a billboard that then has text on it. Can you still mark this text?
Yeah, yeah. You can, if you remove this and this. Actually, also I didn't save, so yeah, then you can do this.
So this is like really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, but like the browsers, like in Safari, it's stuttering, and in Firefox the resolution is really bad because they render it at a really low resolution. And in Chrome, it's quite cool, but yeah, I would not use this in a real world project right now. Maybe there are some fixes, but yeah, but also really interesting trick to do. But most of the time, you don't want to bend text or like show text from the side. Like most of the time, you really want to show this in a straight way. Yeah, I think we're coming to an end, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I got like all of my notes and your notes are through. um, Anything you want to show in the end? Like maybe what would happen if we just search for HTML in the op select and maybe find something? Maybe we missed something like the iframe thing.
Okay. Let's go to this page, which is also super handy, and look at the HTML stuff. Or do our viewers have any question or anything they want to know? Yeah, cursor is also handy. You can change your cursor on the fly. So you see here, it has a different cursor in each row, and also
Hmm.
this doesn't have any cursor, which is also handy sometimes. You can also upload your own cursor. Um, yeah, I think that's. Yeah, there's. Um, this is also quite interesting. Info URL. So it's quite boring here on cables, but when you publish when you export your patch and build your own website or something, you can see like which host it has or which URL it has, and you can even um, get the path, and you can show something different on different paths. So maybe there's a page called blue, and then you wanna show like the blue background, and
Not
yeah,
so much about HTML, but what we often do is what show or hide the sidebar based on the URL, so that that you
yeah,
have the sidebar in the editor, but once you export the patch and give it to the client or put it on a website, then you don't have the sidebar anymore, and you don't have to think about it when like feedbacking back and forth, basically.
yeah. So you can pass this and decide like this is more website related than HTML basically.
Yeah.
Probably it's in the wrong namespace. Yeah, you can also yeah.
It says text area. There's a text area HTML element. What would I ever do with that? I mean,
Um,
I know a text area, but what for?
this
In
is
cables.
this was for evoke basically. Yeah, so you can create an input, big input element basically with this op.
Okay. Mhm.
Um, yeah. Yeah. There was also window info. I wanna. Yeah, this is the size. Okay. Yeah, I would say we have the important ones.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So should we then wait for a bit for a few more questions?
Yeah. Does anyone has yeah any questions about this or anything HTML related? Wir machen bunt.
Yeah, one question he says. So shoot. I'd like to stop iOS Safari to bounce on scroll. There seem to be different ways.
Yeah.
What's
Uh,
your recommendation?
Good question. I don't know out of my head, but we are right now preparing an FAQ section in our docs, and this should go there.
We have
So,
something
wait.
similar in there already with like the click gray out on iOS, and that uses the super specific CSS thing.
What do you mean?
In the FAQ, we already have something like on iOS, if you tap, then you get
Ah,
like a gray overlay, and that is being disabled by a super specific CSS class. But since wir machen Bund says there's different ways, I guess he already would have
yeah.
found a CSS rule to do this.
Yeah, I think it's. I think you have to limit the size of the document or of the body or something. I don't know out of my head. Um, so in the mouse wheel op, we have this prevent scroll, which actually prevents scrolling, but I am not sure if this is also helping with this bounce problem on iOS Safari. Really? I don't know out of my head, but this needs to go to the FAQ section because I think I'm Googling this every time I do something for iOS. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not so sure because he asks if this could be like a default option, but I don't really want to intervene with the outside HTML too much with cables. So we just want to do like this is not a website creator or something. It should be easy to use what you create with cables in a different environment, and I don't want to change that environment or try to change it because many websites will not like this, and so we are not doing this often. But I could imagine that we create an extra op for this that fixes this style sheet. That would be an option, or probably there is just a CSS setting which I don't know, hide overflow or something like this, and then you could just put it into the CSS code here, and then it would work. But I don't know out of my head. No, sorry.
Anything else?
Yeah. So if you mean like I just want to export and forget about everything and it's just a CSS rule, then you can just put it in here and then you can change the body style of the whole page. You can just if you write in body border. I'm getting tired, I think. You can just change cables with this, right? If I say div border 1 pixel red, then you see. I thought solid. Yeah. So then cables looks like this. So you can just change those rules too. So you can just mess with the whole site around you, be it in cables or be it outside of cables of the website. So there's no sandboxing in CSS. Basically, it's just changing everything around you. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Um, um, if you want, so I think we want to do this more often, right, Stefan? Like
Yeah,
more like a
that worked really well. I think that was a good overview about like the basic examples and what you can do with it in in cables. So, examples of HTML and CSS and stuff like that.
yeah,
Of course, it took a bit of knowledge of both like HTML, web development, CSS. But yeah, I can also picture doing this a bit more often
yeah,
with.
and we also really love questions from our viewers. So we are thinking about doing something like this over data, loading data or loading text or getting stuff into cables, so stuff that's a bit more technical and not only visual stuff. We want to do this more, and or maybe also coding with cables, like coding operators or something. If you guys have ideas or wishes, then tell us in the forum or on Twitter or something, and we think about this and do more technical stuff, basically. Yeah. What else is there to say? And I think that's it.
No,
Yeah.
I think we're all good. That wraps it up quite nicely, actually. So maybe let's call it a day.
Yeah.
Thank
Let's call it
everyone
today.
for being here.
Yeah. Thank you guys, and yeah, we will. So we're really happy with the Tuesday. So we will do it every Tuesday, not just us. Also, probably Andro is doing it next week again. But if you guys have more wishes or more ideas, we will do more. We will just do more because this is just super easy to do, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great guys. Yeah, thanks for being here. And see you next week then.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.